Welcome back. Now we answer your questions. If you have a question yourself, visit our website, www.quranspeaks.com. Okay, Brother Shabir, we're going to answer these questions rapid fire, so you're going to have to be quick. The first question we have is, what is the meaning of the single Arabic letter Noon, which stands at the head of the 68th chapter of the Quran? Very specific.
And no one knows exactly. I mean, there have been suggestions that this is Noon representing the fish of Jonah, but no one can say that for certain. What we can say is that this, along with the 28 other surahs of the Quran that begin with these mysterious letters, have these letters at the beginning. They're part of the Word of God, but nobody knows what they mean. What they mean, and there are some things which are mysterious in the book. God has left it so, we keep it at that.
All right, next question. Was the headscarf worn by elite women back in the day and not by slaves? Why, if it's a religious clothing, then the slaves are not subjected to wear the scarf? Does this mean the elites were safe from men who were sexually attracted to them rather than the slaves? So I think the person is asking, it's a little bit confusing, but the person is asking about, was the headscarf worn by slaves and elite people? How did it work?
Yeah, so the question probably comes from some brief knowledge of the 59th chapter, the 33rd chapter of the Quran, the 59th verse, which says, tell the believing women that they are to draw their outer garments over themselves so that they are recognized and not molested. A commentary on the Quran, a classical commentary, suggests that what this refers to is that the fact that the noble women, the free believing women, used to cover used to cover their faces, and the slave women didn't. Or rather, more so, the noble women would be expected to cover their faces. The slave women didn't. When the Muslim women went with their faces uncovered and they were molested, when the molesters were asked about this, they said, well, you know, we thought that they were slave women. So that according to that commentary, this Quranic verse is directing believing women to cover their faces so that they will be known as noble women. And in that case, they will not be molested. But then the questioner is rightly asking, if that's the commentary, well, what about the slave women? Shouldn't they be protected from this molestation as well? So how would this be a full solution to the problem? And my answer to this is that we don't know all of these details about who wore what at that time. Everything we have about that period comes to us through later writing, and that later writing is tainted by the memories of Muslims who have lived through a reinterpretation of how things should have been. So we have to do a lot of detective work here and go back looking closely at what the Quranic text says. And when this verse says that they should draw a part of their outer garments over themselves so that they are recognized and not molested, this obviously should apply to all believing women, whether slave or free. There's a certain level of decency in society that should be applied to all, slave or free. And in the case of women, when it says that they should be recognized and not molested, this to me is very clear evidence that their faces should be left uncovered, because that's how we recognize people, by knowing who is who. And if there is any relaxation at all, it may be that for people who were enslaved at the time, because they did not have their full freedom and because they were subject to a lot of menial tasks, then they needed a certain freedom to go about and do their work, and sometimes too much clothing can become an encumbrance if you're trying to do work. But of course, one cannot, in that circumstance, remove those aspects of clothing which are necessary for the decency in society. So we must now think about different levels of clothing, a certain basic level that is necessary absolutely for decency, and then certain add-ons that people would include for flair. Let's say a man in some societies would wear a hat as part of his full attire, and that marks him off as being decent in that situation. But if he has a lot of work to do, or especially menial tasks, he may take off his hat on that occasion. So he's not doing anything indecent. But of course, he wouldn't take off his lower garment, because that would be absolutely out of the question. So in a similar way, if we think about women's clothing at the time, there must have been a certain minimum requirement that all women would have had to, or would be expected to abide by. And then there could be add-ons which, given the circumstances, one would be free to remove. It might be in this context that the same chapter, well, the 24th chapter of the Quran, rather, tells us that as for those women who have reached retirement age, there is no harm on them if they were to remove their outer garment. So there is a basic level of cover, and then there is an extraneous level which can be removed, whether you're talking about older women or slave women who are subject to menial tasks.
Thank you for those answers, Dr. Shabir Ali.
You're quite welcome.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.